Hi, and welcome back to the Rearranger app. So last week we made all these plans of how to create the application and we choose Flask. So right now we are going to create a very simple Flask application, and then we're going to see that, test that if it works, and then we can continue making the rest of it, creating the JavaScript to write the canvas and draw the things on the screen. So right now we have hello defined, and now we're gonna try to use the render template built-in function call to actually call into a HTML page. Obviously we need the Python documentation, docstrings, and once that's done, we can create the index.html. So, and I believe that's gonna be it. So we're gonna create our index.html, HTML, which is gonna be a very simple HTML page that's gonna house our canvas eventually. And it's just gonna say like hello world, right? So nothing too major. So the eventual goal of this application would be to allow the user to create rooms, position them in a way that's accurate to real life, and then create objects in that room so they can shift them around and make sure they're happy with the placement. Now, for initially, we're going to try to have rectangulars objects, and then eventually move on to squares and multi side objects. So right now we're just testing out a very simple index HTML page and make sure that we get what we expected, which is hello world. Once that's done, we can move on to the next step, which is to create our error pages, and then eventually create a page that shows our canvas. So right now we see hello world at localhost port 5000, the default port of Flask, and indeed we do see hello world, so we know that our index HTML is being called, and this is everything is hooking up correctly. So now we're trying to create our error page. We want a 404 error and a 500 error. Obviously doc string, but and these errors are important because they're the most common errors that you could face in an application. 404 means not found. Basically, I typed in a bad link. The user typed in a bad link, and there's nothing there. 500 means there's something wrong. It's an internal server error. There's something wrong with our server. We couldn't save to the database. We couldn't query the database. We couldn't parse the information, etc., etc. And that's why we need a 500 page to show to the user. Now we are creating an error HTML, and we could just pass in the error code in. So it's going to be a very simple error HTML page to show to the user. And basically it's going to be like, oh, it's just not going to be an error has occurred. And if we go to hello, we see that an error has occurred. Basically the message that we put in, and that's going to be the 400 or 404 error. So now, after we have our errors, we can create a brand new route, and that's going to be our room, which is going to take in a index or a room number, room ID, if you will. And based on that room ID, we can query the database and then get the correct room with all these configurations, all the objects, all the size of the room, etc. Out. Obviously, for right now, everything is going to be completely empty. We're just going to have some default value. And so once that's done, we're going to try to actually write the canvas so we could draw on the screen. And so for next week, I think we're going to try to allow the user to actually input some boxes onto the screen. And now once a user is able to set up walls, then we can add the save capability to allow us to save the room into our database. So for right now, we're just creating a very simple like web page that allows us to just draw on the canvas. So we're just gonna have a room ID that we're gonna pass in. There's gonna be an error here, mainly because I didn't write the templating language correctly, which will be rectified in a little bit. And then once we save, we refresh the page, and we see that our room ID are indeed passing through. Didn't get refreshed, mainly because Flask doesn't really rebuild HTML when it doesn't feel like anything has changed. And we're just gonna try to figure it out. I believe is because I didn't restart the application. Once I restarted the application again, it should pick up the changes to room.html, and ideally it will be displaying everything in the correct order. Now, and then once that's done, we can just move on to the canvas page, and then next week we can move on to allowing the user to input the boxes onto the canvas, and then the week after that we can allow the user to save and query the rooms, and then we could spend one more week after that trying to load it up to GCP or Google Cloud platform. So right now we created a canvas.js to house our entire JavaScript file, which just draws a box. And we're just basically trying to get that box working. We're gonna add that to our file, so we don't see any errors. I think mainly just because I didn't restart the server to pick up all these changes. So we see that JavaScript is not being ran. So once I restart the servers, and now we see that everything's not working correctly, but JavaScript is being not found, and now we see a green box. Thank you for watching, and tune in next week while we move on to the next step, which is allowing users to add to the canvas.